All right, everyone, let's get this show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's April 27th, 2022. My name's Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, which just means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/office-hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office-hours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a video recording of our session today to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, we really appreciate if you hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, let's jump into announcements. Got a ton of announcements, but brief ones. So the big one that hit us is, a number of years ago, we started using the git.io shortener. This was a nice way to shorten very long raw GitHub URLs into short and succinct ones. So for the longest time, we've been using git.io build harness when they still allowed you to have custom slugs. And yeah, so they are shutting this service down on April 29th. And well, looks like it's pretty darn slow already for me here. So what's fascinating about this is, yes, GitHub announced in January that the service was going to be shut down at some point. They gave no time horizon for it, and they were just making everything read-only, and that's fine. That didn't affect us. But then on April 25th, they give 4 days notice that they're just shutting down the entire service. So I don't know what the reason is. It sounds like there might be some pretty serious security attack vector going on right now. Since these links look legitimate, they look very benign, git.io/something, I could imagine they might be used for some phishing purposes or whatnot. So that brings me to the next point, is that Cloud Posse has been using that for some time. And we had all these links that were like this, git.io/build harness. And that would just redirect to something like this, which is the raw URL. You might ask why we don't just use the raw URL itself. Well, first of all, it's really long. And we are not able to change that location if we need to from a future-proofing standpoint. So we have acquired cloudposse.tools. So now you can go to cloudposse.tools/build harness, and it's the same file, and we can control that fully. This is hosted on Cloudflare, so it's highly available. It's just a simple redirection, and we provide a command to switch over to this. If you're curious, like how we use that or why we have that, if you look at any of our projects, for example, one of our Terraform modules like this MQ broker, we have a makefile in our projects. Now, to keep our projects light, we have implemented a kind of interesting hack that allows us to import a makefile remotely using curl, and it's based on that address. So here you can see we haven't updated all of our Cloud Posse modules. Here's an example of the old syntax. This should be replaced with cloudposse.tools, and it'll work fine. We are going to be opening up few hundred pull requests over the coming day here with automation, don't worry, to fix that. Any questions? All right. One more small announcement, well, big, but not that consequential. So Istio is one of the last things related to the Kubernetes project largely that Google hasn't turned over, and now it is moving over to CNCF. So that's a nice move by Google, securing the longevity of Istio as a standalone project. let's see, small one, just everyone remembers log4j hell that happened. What was that was the log4shell that happened end of last year. Well, sounds like in patching that and some of the other conditions, Amazon introduced new flaws and has someone has uncovered them. So no good deed goes unpunished. I haven't read deeper into this one, if anyone has any additional context. All right, then this was a interesting one. You know, when I first saw it, I thought it was an operator just because Fairwinds has so many operators. Turns out this does not look like it's an operator. It is a command line tool that implements its own declarative YAML spec. If you're familiar with Helmfile or Helmsman, this is now your third option. It's the reckoner that offers some basic way of declaratively defining the releases you need for a cluster and a way to apply them. If I'm to think like, why did they do this? Well, they figured there was just so much bloat in the other options that why not just start fresh, since all we need to do are these little things until you need to do the templating, until you need dependencies, until you need environments, until you need imports, until you need, and then you're back to Helmfile. So every project starts with good intentions. Then let's see, one announcement. Was it you, Matt, that brought this one up? I forget who brought this across my attention. This is not a new post. If anything, this makes it even more interesting. This is going back to 2018 and how Chick-fil-A manages their on-prem infrastructure at restaurants with edge nodes on Kubernetes and remote monitoring with Prometheus and FluentBit. Anyone know more about this? Are they still doing it?
I think they're still doing it because I know someone who actually works for the company that told me they are. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It'd be good if you could just call the REST service and get chicken sandwich, and then it would just come up. It would return you a chicken sandwich.
Yeah, is there the Chick-fil-A Terraform provider like the Domino's one?
Well, now I'm hungry.
Yeah. There, you know, I'd never had a Chick-fil-A until I moved to Texas. Not that it's a Texas thing, but they're really good. All right, doesn't look like they have a Terraform provider, so unfortunately we can't get further along. So the last announcement I have today, I'm really excited about. I got this from Anton's newsletter. If you go to weekly.tf, he has a lot of good stuff he posts on here. So this was about the Terraform registry. So if we jump into sweetops and look at this thread, 22 days ago, Pepe was asking about, like, you know, how do you work with a customer who won't use just like off the shelf open source modules that are hosted off-prem, like in the, you know, on the Terraform registry or on GitHub? And it was an interesting question that I hadn't revisited for a number of years. We had brought this up a long time ago when we were researching for another customer, going all the way back to like 2018 or 2019. Well, at that time, we'd also hoped there was a similar solution, but there wasn't. And now finally someone has implemented a bona fide Terraform registry proxy. It's in Go, and it does, it basically understands the registry format and the API syntax and is able to rewrite the requests for the artifacts midstream. So like man in the middle, you could say. On the one side, you could say, "Oof, that's kind of scary that this is even possible. Maybe that's a problem with the registry and they should be signing these requests, so it wouldn't be possible." On the other, I'm pretty grateful there's a way to do this now, because you can then the second part of this is vendoring in all the modules and artifacts you depend on, storing them in some place like S3 or Artifactory, and then using the registry proxy, which could be deployed as a Lambda, presumably, to just do simple rewrites to your static hosting in S3. So there's a few reasons why you might want to do that beyond just compliance, beyond just resiliency. Basically, if the registry is offline for some reason, that could impede your ability to deploy at any time. If a release or version goes offline, then you are also in a bind. And then lastly, if you have it in your own S3, it does open up the possibility to do more simplified compliance scanning, but also invalidation. So for example, if you do deem that some version of some module is not copacetic, you can just remove it from S3, for example, or from Artifactory, mark it as bad. So I think this is cool. I think it's probably very young as a project. It was started just last month. It looks like it has only a bunch of commits and not a lot of no pull requests. So everything's being committed into main. Is it ready for prime time? Probably not, but that's open source.
Yeah, so I'll add a little color commentary. I had in a previous life, I had a very large customer who was using a bunch of modules that were supplied to them from my previous company, and they would not rely on the previous company to keep like GitHub up and running and whatever. So they had their own private like GitHub enterprise that they wanted to basically mirror all the modules into. But then the problem became that all the URLs inside those modules point to things not on their private URL. So what we ended up doing was we actually used the Git instead of setup. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but so you can basically just do git config URL dot and then your source, and then instead of the original source, and it changes that. Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah,
you have it in there.
But Matt, in that case, the problem would be, for example, if you use Cloud Posse and you use, let's say the ALB module, the inter-module dependency will not work unless you create an org to download every single module of Cloud Posse in that org within your GitHub.
Yep, yeah, exactly. That's what you would have to do. You would have to mirror like all of the modules that you're using to that other org, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
that's what this customer chose to do.
Yeah, and I posted another link, Eric, there just now in the Office Hours channel of apparently Smart. He created a Terraform module that actually does very similar to this Go app, but uses API gateway because it basically does the same thing, but it's a process that is documented of how the discovery process of the modules and the providers is done. You can even use an S3 bucket to upload the versions you want of the modules, and it will pull them out of there instead. So you can use, example.com as the registry URL / the name of the module / AWS, and we'll pull it from S3.
Where did you say you posted the link, Pepe? Was it in the Zoom chat?
In office hours.
Nice, thanks. Let me
I found it because I was reading that undiscoverable values from Terraform, whatever that new issue that apparently Smart created. And then I saw this and I was like, what the heck? This is basically the answer I was looking last week. And then you posted this thing in Go and I was like, what? It was perfect timing. So it's very interesting.
But it will handle the rewrites, or it does not?
Yes, yeah, because it uses the auto discovery protocol, which is actually documented. The Terraform Service Discovery Protocol. You see, there is a link over there that explains what it does. So you need to just do a certain type of. It uses Dynamo to do the response for how the registry works and the module discovery works. And then basically you just use your own URL for it, which is pretty cool.
That is interesting. I do recall, I think, having come across this in the past. Yeah, I started, but I totally forgot about it. Going
Yeah.
to add
I'm
that.
actually going to try it because I'm having that problem right now. So
It
I'm
does
going to
look
try it
like
and see.
it's 3 years old, so it's got to be using like Terraform 0.11 or something, but
12.
oh, 12, okay. Could be worse.
It could be worse, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And then let's see, what was in the number of modules here? Does it depend
Yeah,
on?
so it sets the storage for the modules, then it does the registry for
I-
the providers.
Yeah, but isn't this actually just a Terraform registry implementation? It's not actually a proxy where it's like proxying
Correct, it is.
downstream.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, yeah. Yeah.
It's not actually like proxying a downstream module for you. You can basically just publish packages here and get it from the private.
So you would basically
Repository.
publish, so I think what Pepe didn't want to do was have to pollute the GitHub org with 1,000 GitHub repos of every
Yeah.
module you depend on. So
It
this
was not allowed, yeah.
to just keep all those on S3, and then you would basically pull and push the modules.
Yeah,
to-
but I think you're gonna have the same problem is when module A under the hood uses module B, it's still going to reach out to the Cloud Posse organization to get module B.
Unless you're using the module proxy.
Right. I'm saying this. solution that
Oh,
we're
yeah,
looking
that's
at.
right. Yes,
So you have to
yes, you're
combine,
right.
you have to combine the solutions. So
Correct.
you use this solution here, the TF registry, to vendor all the modules. So you can pull them in a quote unquote air-gapped environment. And then you use the registry proxy to ensure that every request pulls it from there, and it might fail. But if it fails, that's what you want. And then you got to vendor it into that repo.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I think the combination of the, I mean, ultimately should just be in the same proxy, and I don't see why one couldn't.
Yeah, I didn't actually. Well, that project by apparently more is for people, like for companies that want their own private registry. It's not like, so if you don't want to use the Terraform registry, if you're JP Morgan Chase and you have 1,000 modules that you developed internally and you just want to publish them to a private module registry, this is one way you can run that private module registry like on your own infrastructure. But that still doesn't solve the problem of like vendoring and rewriting URLs and all that. You
So
still need that
so
proxy.
you have to combine them. This does all the rewriting. This does all the vendoring. You tie them together, and now you have a solution. Somehow you got to publish them still to the registry. That's still
correct. Well, I think this thing that he put up there actually takes care of that as well, because it supports like a REST endpoint. Like all the registry publishing is a like well published API spec. So there's actually like an endpoint that you basically when you publish something, quote unquote, it just means that when you call the get endpoint for a particular thing, a certain set of metadata is returned for it. So I think it writes just the dynamo to do all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, here it shows what it looks like. So it's very like it's a deterministic URL based on the version and the ID here.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm curious how that proxy actually works though. Is it an HTTP proxy or?
I would assume so. Did not look
Or-
under the hood.
Yeah, I didn't look in. I can look at it like later.
Yeah,
but
it's so simple. It's just a single main file. There's nothing else to it.
well, yeah. I guess my question is then like somehow you have to configure your client to use this as the proxy, like
But
your
that's
Terraform client.
That's where you just set the HTTP proxy envar, and that works with
Right.
that works. Terraform respects that because under the hood it just uses the Go SDK.
That's assuming you want to proxy all of your HTTP traffic through that proxy.
Good point. Good point.
So yeah, that's what I was wondering, like how it all was all implemented. So yeah, I'll have to look a little bit deeper. I haven't actually taken a look at it. Sorry for the tangent.
Yeah, no, good point. Worth looking into. All right, any other announcements before we get into Q&A?
Yeah, and sorry, just a thought on that really quickly. The reason I said, assuming you want to proxy all your HTTP traffic through that, like, let's say, for example, in your CI builds, you're doing like, you know, you're pulling down a whole bunch of like Docker, you know, Docker images. So like on your average CI build, you've got like 3 or 4 gigs or something that you're transferring through it. You would have to then scale that HTTP proxy to be able to handle the level of volume that you're going to have for everything.
It's really just HTTPS proxy equals, you know.
Yeah, and then just for and then call Terraform on the same. Yeah. I was thinking, yeah, that's one other possible way to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Any other announcements we can get to today? I didn't really see anything interesting out of AWS that caught my eye. All right. Then let's go into Q&A. Looks like Andy helped populate some more questions here. Thank you. So I think we've covered these in bits and pieces. Maybe we can just remove them. Eric, are you set on pros and cons of using the latest EKS AMIs? I think we did talk about that. Eric Berg.
Yeah, we did touch on that.
All right. So we'll skip that.
Oh, I did see one other, I looked back at my notes, I saw one other thing that I thought was interesting, Eric, just from an announcement, is that the Aurora Serverless V2 is now generally available.
Oh.
So I think you don't have to worry about that. We're going to delete all your databases thing anymore.
Well, they always said that was going to, even when they always, when the preview graduates, your data will be deleted, even if there's a, but is that not happening?
Well, it's not preview anymore. It's now generally available. Right?
Yeah, yes, but even in the way they said, where was it? I don't remember. The way it was framed was that even if it graduates, you would likely lose your data. I guess they were just saying that to CYA to cover their ass.
Well, I'm saying if you adopted Aurora Serverless 2 today,
oh,
there is no graduation. Yeah. Like I'm saying,
if you are already on it, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I assume it didn't go away, or else I would have seen a lot of people bitching and complaining about it. But like my point would be, you no longer, now it's not a consideration not to use it because of that caveat, because it's generally available.
Yeah.
So that's all.
It's this one here.
I'd also add 2 announcements. So Karpenter now supports pod affinity, and there's a new IAM condition based on the resource org, so the organizational unit, which is interesting for like large companies.
Yeah, we were just having an internal chat about that. Jeremy and I were just chatting about that in Slack.
Yeah, it looks interesting. We couldn't immediately place it, how we would leverage it. But did you have anything to add to that? Or so I found this was the wording exactly on serverless. Don't use for production databases. All resources and data will be deleted when the preview ends. So that's maybe they're not doing it now, but that would be an interesting thing for clarification.
Yeah. I guess my point is that the preview has ended, so you don't have to worry about that anymore going forward.
I got you.
Yeah.
Vlad, what was your other announcement?
I posted it in the Zoom chat. Karpenter got a new release, 0.9.0, which supports pod affinity. Woo! It was an ask from a bunch of people.
Yeah. No, that's cool. We haven't yet adopted Karpenter, but I think we're going to do that shortly. I think it's going to be a nice replacement for the
Uh,
standard autoscaler.
I love it. It's absolutely awesome, but there is an issue that a lot of people are hitting. So if you only have one deployment that is scaling up and down, it's awesome. But right now, Karpenter doesn't really scale down that nicely if you have a lot of complexity.
Hmm.
Give me a second to find the actual issue. Yes, I found the issue. So it doesn't do defragging, so it doesn't scale down. You may actually just end up with a node that's 1% utilized by a pod.
Isn't this though a general problem of Kubernetes? Because we've had that too. I know there's an operator that helps kind of rebalance your pods, but I think that
Cluster autoscaler can kill nodes, well, can terminate nodes respecting the pod disruption budget whenever they are below a threshold. By default, I think it's 30%. Karpenter doesn't have that. You can do it. A lot of with my clients, are working around the issue in Karpenter by using the node problem detector with a custom script. And we're basically, oh, is this node underutilized? Just kill it. But, or the descheduler, yeah.
yeah, this
But
was the one I was thinking of.
Karpenter is not ideal for clusters that are really, really complex due to this right now.
Hmm.
It If you architect your node groups and your deployments properly, it's not an issue, but it requires knowing your apps to fully take advantage of it. Some people don't care about it because they only have one deployment that scales up and down a lot, and the rest of the cluster is managed by cluster autoscaler, so it's fine. It depends on the use case, but a surprising number of people mentioned that issue, and I was like, yeah, it's legit. So now I inform people about it.
That's helpful. When you set up an EKS cluster and you're using the cluster autoscaler, are you provisioning by default then a small node pool that spans multiple AZs just for running Karpenter?
I usually put it in Fargate, both
Oh,
Karpenter and cluster autoscaler. So
yeah.
my default recommendation for Kubernetes is do an autoscaling group of on-demand nodes, like 5, 10 nodes, whatever, to run your latency, your interruption-sensitive workloads, the stuff that always needs to be up, like cluster autoscaler, ingress controller, things like that. And for the rest, if your applications can take it, la di da di da, just go ahead and use a bunch of spot instances, and you should be fine.
Okay, and that makes sense to me. And why? And just for thoroughness, why this small node pool of 5 nodes ish, than just using the Fargate, EKS Fargate for those?
EKS Fargate still has some limitations. You cannot do daemon sets, which for some people is annoying, and you are still limited in how big the pods can be. I
Mm,
believe the current limitation is 30 gigs of memory and 6 cores. I could be wrong on that.
mhm.
And for some of the workloads that I'm running, we need more resources.
Right.
So
I mean, but you'll never need more resources for Karpenter, for ALB ingress controller, for reloader, for all these standard controllers, and for everything else with Karpenter scaling up your nodes. No.
uh, depends how big your clusters are and how fast they move and how much churn you have. I had to run cluster autoscaler with a bunch of memory and processing power and tune things because it didn't have time to look at all the pods and do all the logic, for example. Because it was a really big cluster with a lot of churn, a lot of pods, a lot of nodes, and so on and so forth. It depends.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's see, did we cover everything? I think we did. All right, well, let's get into back to Q&A. So we did cover Matt Gowie's question as well briefly as we were exiting office hours a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago. Matt, did you get that implemented based on what we talked about?
No, I haven't implemented anything, but I do have an idea for I think what we had chatted through.
Matt, do you
I probably have
remember
to go.
where the example, which repo the example was in? Was it in the SES module? Or Matt Calhoun? Are you muted, Matt? Okay.
Sorry, I had an issue. I couldn't get off of mute. What was the question that you had towards me? I'm sorry.
If you remember where, oh yeah, we implemented in the IAM system user module, the rotation.
Yeah.
So here, I was just gonna share Matt an example.
Yeah, it's in the user.
Here
It's
it is.
called, yep.
I'll put that in office hours.
And how does that work again? I remember seeing the original PR for that into your guys' provider, but is the idea that it just, when it hits that max age, it will recreate on an apply, or will destroy on an apply?
Yep.
It'll lead
But
to-
it won't actually, it won't delete it if there isn't an apply that happens. So you have to be constantly running the Terraform, right?
Yeah, so like the way that we use it is in conjunction with Spacelift and drift detection. So
Yeah.
we constantly are planning the stack. The stack shows up with drift that says like this access key, needs to be replaced. Basically, when you apply that, it creates the new one. And then generally what we do is we then output those to we actually output those to parameter store, to SSM parameter store, and then that's where we store all that stuff for like our other apps to pick up and use. So
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's a great solution for system users. This is a client that they have like a number of contractors. They have, they're kind of a mess in regards to how they're managing people. So we're not doing SSO or SAML or anything. It's like manually managed users. And I want the users to be able to manage their IAM creds themselves, but I also want those creds to be expiring. I don't want them to live for 3 years. And I think there was some suggestions around a Lambda to do that. And that was the thing I was trying to avoid. But this is good for system users. Definitely something I have in the back of my mind, and I'm glad we talked about it. But I don't think there's a great solution for auto expiring. Maybe there's probably a config rule that I could use to get alerted when.
There's this Terraform module by this company called Masterpoint. You might have heard about them.
Yeah.
Matt's but what if you created a config here that nuked old IAM?
That deletes them. That's not a bad idea. I'd be a little bit afraid to run nuke against a regular account, but that's not a bad idea. Something like that would be good.
Well, and then
anyway,
even if you're following that model, I would still architect it so you have an identity account where you're provisioning those IAM users and they're assuming roles to other accounts. And then the worst that happens is you nuke something in the identity account, and you can always recover that.
That's a good point. Yeah. And I'm all about identity accounts. This is, again, funky customer, enterprise customer who does not have a good AWS account architecture. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's, that's a good call. I don't know. I think I can use some combination of those two thought processes. But it kind of stinks that AWS doesn't provide us a means by which to accomplish that type of stuff ourselves. It's again one of the failings of IAM, but we could go down that path for a while. So
yeah. So moving on to the next question, Andrew Elkins. I'm not sure if you're on the line today.
He was on, but he said he had to drop, and he'll review the video later.
Okay. Well, we can talk about it nonetheless. Thoughts on Kubernetes ingress controllers for high volume deployments. So first thing I'd like to point out, which I think is often overlooked when you're talking about Kubernetes and ingress controllers, is they're not mutually exclusive. You can have as many ingress controllers as you want on the cluster, and they're just associated with different ingress classes. So I think it's therefore more and more a reversible decision. If you want to start with something straightforward, if you're on Amazon, I would recommend just going directly with the load balancer controller. And then if you need to grow into something more, optimized for high volume, then go for it. I haven't seen any stats on this. Vlad, what is the volume capabilities of running ALB ingress controller on Kubernetes? My guess is that it'd probably be, more performant than a lot of the alternatives, because solutions like Nginx ingress and HA proxy and traffic have the problem of crosstalk. They don't efficiently manage traffic between pods in the cluster because it's not load balancer to pod communication.
Yep. So you can, any ingress controller or service mesh or whatever, you can tune it and optimize it, and it will work at high volume of requests, high volume of deployments, high volume of whatever. The problem is you may need really an offending amount of in-depth knowledge and throwing money away. So if you're running it's not the ALB ingress controller anymore, it's the AWS load balancer controller now, or
That's correct.
something. They renamed it. I don't know. It's
Amazon load
still
balancer
fine.
controller.
Yeah. The thing is, you're using an ALB. An ALB is managed by AWS, and AWS has a lot of capacity. AWS keeps, I don't know, the ALB capacity. Let's assume I don't have any stats on this, but they keep, I don't know, 5% headroom. At AWS's scale, that is a couple thousands of servers. If you're running your own ingress and you need to take a high volume of requests and not drop them, you need to keep the same thing or scale super, super fast. And you cannot scale that fast. Refer to my blog post. So,
Yeah, exactly. Did you link your blog post? Because you might want to check that.
So yeah, there is an advantage to actually using the cloud provider, the default for whatever your cloud provider is, and that's what I would use, to be honest. But what they're referring here is deployments, so high volume of deployments, and that's a different thing. For example, for the ALB ingress controller, whenever you get a new pod launched, that pod's IP is set into the target group for the ALB. If you are at really, really high volume, you might get some rate limits there. I don't know. I've never had that issue. It's definitely interesting enough to talk about it. And I would really like to see that benchmark, to be honest. It's not an area I had to look into recently, but yeah, I I would strongly, strongly urge people to default to whatever is the default for the cloud. So ALB in AWS or NLB if you're doing things. And I don't know what the default for Azure is. But yeah. And again, you can run Nginx Ingress or Ingress Nginx or Traffic even if you want and make it, but you're going to need a lot of tuning, a lot of knowledge, and you're gonna spend a lot of money having that capacity there. Because again, you have to
And it's
scale.
it's not as mainstream probably as the others. So now it's this esoteric implementation I would avoid therefore. So one thing to totally rule out, I don't know, I don't think this has changed, is Nginx Ingress, the open source version, not the commercial version that you got to pay for. There is no API to update or add or remove pods from the configuration. So it literally does a reload every time you add pods to the backend. And that means that it's spawning a new version of Nginx as a process, loading it up, getting it ready, and then shutting down the old ones. And if you have a busy cluster, adding or removing pods, it's abysmal. So I totally concur with what Lad was saying about use the cloud provider, default to using the cloud provider solution until you can prove it doesn't work. Running into some scaling issues under heavy load, but I'm not sure with what. Oh, with traffic. Yeah, currently using traffic, considering HA proxy. Yeah. So,
Also, there's a big advantage to the ALB controller, for example, like that routes, if you're using it with ALB and in IP mode, the traffic path is load balancer pod. Like that's it direct. If you're using anything else, it's going to be load balancer, random node, kube proxy, random node, target pod. It might be shorter, it might be longer, whatever. That adds latency, that adds network hops, that adds places where stuff can go wrong.
mhm.
But the problem of a lot of deployments is interesting. At that point in time, you're not necessarily affected by uh, how fast is scaling. You're limited by AWS APIs for how often you can update the actual targets in the target group. So that's interesting. I would consider maybe even running multiple deployments of the controller. I don't know. It's something I would reach out to AWS for, to be honest. Because this is interesting, it's high scale, it's the thing that AWS engineers would love to help with. Yeah,
Yeah.
like what's high volume deployments? Because
Yeah. Is it high volume traffic or high volume of pods? That would be one of my questions.
I mean,
But
if you have a million pods, it's gonna take a while to update all of them, and just killing all of them and launching another million pods is always going to be painful because EKS does not scale like that.
you can also shard across load balancers, create multiple ingresses, for example. Um,
I'd venture that some of those limits are per account and not per cluster, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I,
All right,
I
next
need the
question.
value for high volume because in my view, like Kubernetes doesn't scale. For a lot of people, Kubernetes scales. So it depends what scale means. Is it a couple hundred nodes? Is it a couple thousand? How big are the nodes? Are they 24 terabyte nodes or a couple gigs of nodes?
Yeah, no, that there's a lot of things. So Andrew, if you're on the call next week, we can circle back to this question. And
It is fascinating. I love it.
I like these kinds of questions because it's useful to bat ideas around and ways to consider about solving it. So Andrew Roth, you're asking, what advice do you have for how to communicate expectations when people decide to use something brand new that is still super beta and rough and are having problems and are annoyed that things aren't working? So you mean just the whole ecosystem, our whole industry is alpha? I mean, Terraform only.
I mean, yeah, I mean, for the first time in my career, I'm maintaining an open source product that people are starting to like use and adopt, and it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Do you have to communicate this to potential users of your product, to management, to potential open source partners?
To potential users of the product without kind of leaving a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah, so you're having incidents of this. How are they venting? Is it
It's like, well, this feature doesn't work, you know, but and as you expand upon, okay, cool, well, you know, we know it doesn't work because we haven't gotten there yet.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of there, it turns on, but it's not like operational yet.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, how is it not working? What are the pod logs? Well, I'm not sure. I don't know, you know, because it's what we're building is.
Well, and your problem is maybe a little bit simpler than our problem. You have fewer repositories, right? Like,
Yeah, this is really just one.
really just one. So what about leveraging discussions? So you're just transparent about the conversations, about the things that you're working on, so people can feel a sense of ownership over the direction that it's going. I think one of the most frustrating things I have as an end user when I contact companies about some things that, oh, that's a great idea, we'll add it to our backlog. We can't promise it'll ever get implemented. So please, you know, see if you can find a workaround. And then 5 years later, I never see it. And I don't even know if they ever even captured it or logged it. I love it when I can see other people working towards, having these things. Because what seems like a critical issue to this one person, oh my God, I can't believe it doesn't work. This is totally useless. And it just turns out that it's one person that needed it for this one use case, and they already found a way around it, and you don't need to waste your time implementing it.
Yeah, I think the situation is like you showed the Terraform proxy registry thing, right? It's from a month ago. They're not using PRs or anything. It's got no traction. It's, it's very, very, very new. If you decided to use it in your system and you were having problems with it, how would the maintainer of that tool handle you contacting them and going, why isn't all this shit working?
Yeah,
Well, I think
maybe rename.
discussions are great after the fact, but like to warn people that something is very beta and very new. I mean, that's a perfect README scenario. Put it in the README and just say, hey.
Because everyone who uses all products always read all the READMEs. I agree with you.
I mean, no,
we
they
have
don't. But
yeah.
you have something to say.
We have something to point at. Yeah, it's
exactly.
it's in the README. It's not really there yet. I agree with you.
I think in that one project that we saw by apparently Mart, he made it pretty clear that looked like a beta project.
Yeah.
This one here. Or maybe he didn't. No, never mind. I've seen it in some, like they just I would make the intro line to just
You only read comments from GitHub sponsors. I love it. That's really funny. No, it's from the Zoom chat. You should say you only read comments from GitHub sponsors.
I like it.
If someone can't throw you $1, who cares what they think? I like it. In seriousness though, it's like, well, if you want this sooner, why don't you contribute? Submit a PR to fix the things that you care about. Put some skin in the game. I could see that.
That's even rarer than reading the docs.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point out one of my favorite documentation or READMEs that I've ever seen. Check out Go Fiber. Just
what is it?
They have Go Fiber. It's an API library for Golang, but essentially that's not it. It's just Go Fiber. So fiber right there. Yep, that's it. It goes over everything, and they do see limitations, things like that. This is really what I use for like all of my READMEs. Is kind of like I don't like copy it or anything, but I use this for inspiration when making mine.
I like the emojis. That's a good idea.
I use emojis for my sections too.
Yeah, no, I like, and this is also helpful just in thinking about like what are some good common logical sections to use. Would help sell it. Yeah, that's a good example. I'll link that.
A question I would have, Andy, is do you have like confirmed users of the product that you're actually making, or is it just kind of you don't know if they're actually using it or not, and maybe they're asking, well, I'd use it if maybe this was here. It's all kind of like hypothetical situations of maybe using it.
The product is like super early development, 0.0.x, kind of stuff. And there's interested parties that really desperately want it because what they're using now is going away. And so like they want to use it yesterday, and it's like, okay, but it's like there's a ton of dragons here and caveats that it's not quite ready yet for you to just use it and have a bunch of users use it. That's kind of the situation.
I've seen a lot of very early projects just not offer packages. So this is like all the warnings, hey, this is super early, this is alpha, la di da di da. You need to get involved if you really want to use it, and you have to build it yourself, which
Mm.
may not be running a make command, but it sets a barrier of entry and reinforces the idea that this is not prod ready. Don't run it. This is something that's being developed in the open. It's not something that is ready. We don't even have packages yet. Subscribe to releases when we have something that even resembles a beta. We're
So
gonna
there's-
releases.
Sorry about that. So there also is a point to be made here about something like Patreon or buy me a coffee or something like that, where, hey, you want me to do work for you that I'm not specifically, dedicated to right now, pay for it and I'll do it.
So, but this is a commercial product ultimately with an open core, Andy, just based on my understanding of your company that you're at, Defense Unicorns.
It's a completely open source product that just it's so early in kind of development that we haven't really even talked, what if any kind of revenue would come from it.
Yeah.
It's the way my company operates is a lot of the stuff we do is it's we see the mission need for, because we do a lot with government and DoD, so the mission impact is a big driver of our work. Is if we see the mission need, we get it done, and then we kind of come back and figure out how to get paid for it, and it's worked pretty well so far. So we're building something people need, and we're gonna figure out how to make money on it later.
Well, that's great. I love open source just as much as everybody, but I definitely have had a couple of situations where, pay for priority worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions we have today? Let's see the chat.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go for it, Isaac.
If you just joined a place that's trying to start using something like Terraform, and you realize that there's absolutely no appetite for spending as much as required to get something like Spacelift, are you pretty much doomed, or should you just plug along?
Good question. Well, keep in mind that I think Spacelift is pretty negotiable, and that they have free tiers. I don't know, the scale of infrastructure that you're doing. Maybe it'll work. Terraform Cloud also has free tiers. It might be good enough for starting off something. I think that the part I would shy away from possibly is still doing the GitHub Actions work. I have a statement of work I'm preparing right now. I think we're estimating over 1,000 hours to implement the GitHub Actions work to do it the right way, to work with Terraform. And that might not even be enough, who knows? So what would you describe a little bit more? How far along are you guys with Terraform?
Oh, I am about to start using Terraform. Most infrastructure was just built in the console.
Gotcha.
So it would have been nice if I could get us starting, the right way, but
well,
it's not possible.
Vlad makes a good point. Atlantis has come a long way. It's free and it's open source. It's gotten a renewed interest and lots of activity and pull requests now that it's gotten past some of those hurdles. Terraform Cloud is is it not still free? Emil was saying maybe Terraform Cloud pricing. Thought there was still a free tier. Free, yeah. Remote operations, private module registry. Yeah, but what you don't get is any of the team management policy stuff. So Atlantis is, Pepe, what's your feeling on Atlantis these days? Are you still around, Pepe? Did we lose Pepe? That's too bad. Pepe is one of the maintainers of Atlantis and spends a lot of time with it day to day. So he would have been a great person to ask. He'll be on office hours again, probably next week. So are you familiar with Atlantis? It's github.com/run Atlantis.
No, I'm not, but I'll look into it.
Yeah. So yeah, looks like it's really turned a corner in terms of activity. We gave up on it back in like 2019 because they were just not merging PRs, but now they are.
And it's also, Atlantis has the advantage that it's really, really easy to understand. So instead of running Terraform apply on your laptop, you're running Terraform apply on a server and getting the output on your GitHub PR. That is very, very easy for a team that's new to Terraform, new to infrastructure as code to understand. Spacelift is
Unfortunately, we use GitLab. So one option for us is the GitLab managed Terraform state, but I'm also going to look at Atlantis.
Yeah, Christopher Pick says, don't be the only person at your company who cares about this. You're fighting a losing battle then, probably. If they aren't investing more than one person's time and effort on this, they aren't investing enough to succeed. And there's some truth to be said. You might be fighting an uphill battle, and I think you're doing the right thing in pushing them down this route, but they need to embrace this as this is not a nice to have, this is a must have. This is the equivalent of owning your IP and your processes around your business. And if you don't have that as code, you don't own it. It's just random configuration, not repeatable, not documented. So
yeah, agreed. I mean, I think that once I have things running, the benefits will become obvious and it will be easier to evangelize.
Okay. Yeah. So I would try Atlantis out. I think Pepe is working on a Terraform module to make it easier to deploy. I think our module is a bit out of date for it.
And if it's just GitLab in general that you're having issues with, I have a ton of experience with that. So you could PM me anytime or whatever, and I'll help you out with that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there some GitLab turnkey workflows or pipelines?
Yeah, they do have like GitLab manages your state now, and they have some good documentation on that. But
It is just like that's 1% of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with IAC, GitLab isn't totally there yet. They're working on it, but there are ways around it too. You can get by, but the biggest problem, I do think something like Spacelift would be better in that area.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was just going to make one comment that I have no idea sort of where you sit in the organization and who's sort of your champion in the management layer, et cetera. But it's somewhat of a fallacy that not spending X number of hundreds or thousands of dollars a month for a base, for a Spacelift implementation is saving you that amount of money by not spending it. They're most likely going to end up where you're going to spend significant amounts of time, like maintaining some other piece together solution, or doing manual work, or breaking something because you don't have like a consistent policy, etc. that does all of those things that Spacelift does for you. So there's probably, I don't want to get too formal, but there's probably some sort of like business case with ROI to be made on obtaining a tool that's the right tool for the job, and really pushing your management to invest in that if you're going to go down the Terraform route.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been in touch with some of the Spacelift guys, so I'll talk with them because and hear what they have about being flexible with pricing, because our biggest challenge is we do require to run our own runners, and so that complicates it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, talk with them. They're negotiable. They want to make sure you get the value for the stage that you're at, and grow with them. So
Awesome.
yeah, thanks, Isaac. That's a good question. Thanks everyone for your time today. Good conversation. If you haven't yet already subscribed to our YouTube channel, just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. We have our weekly office hours invite. If you haven't yet registered for that, go to cloudposse.com/officehours. We'll get a calendar invitation to our weekly session. If you haven't yet connected with me on LinkedIn, just go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman and connect. I look forward to talking with everyone next week, same time, same place. Thank you.